This is Bitnar Talks, the engineer takes on construction. Episode 15. Hi, I'm Piotr Bitnar. Each day I help my clients plan and design building projects through Bitnar Limited, a consulting chartered structural engineer's practice. My biggest passion and the cornerstone on which I've built my business is finding clever solutions for construction projects. I am a chartered structural engineer and a budding software developer, so you can rest assured that I will strive to talk about the best practices and the use of new technologies in the industry. And if you're embarking on a construction project or are involved in planning, designing and building the world around us, you'll find this podcast useful. Approved Document B, Fire Safety, Part 2. Hi there, and welcome back to the Bitnar Talks, your favorite podcast on all matters of architecture, engineering and construction. It is Thursday the 9th of May 2024, and I'm here back with you with the 15th episode and further information on fire safety. Fire safety will take several episodes to go through, so buckle up, Dorothy, we're going down the rabbit hole. And it is a deep one indeed. Last week in episode 14, I started talking about the Approved Document B, Fire Safety, and introduced you to Volume 1 and its initial sections, Sections 0 and 1. I've mentioned that the approach to fire safety will generally follow the risk profile of the particular building, assigning different purpose group level to different buildings. In this episode, I'll carry on talking about Volume 1 Purpose Group 1A to 1C. So flats, houses with floor levels at between 4.5 to 18 meter height, and houses with floors at levels under 4.5 meter in height. An alternative approach to approved document guidance is available, and you can use fire safety engineering approach using, for example, British Standard 7974 and ancillary published documents, but the approach cannot be less safe than that of the approved document. Now, I'll finish talking about the requirement B1 of building regulations with concerns addressed in section 2 and 3, means of escape from dwelling houses and flats, and move to requirement B2, internal fire spread linings, addressed in section 4 of the approved documents. So without further ado, let's dive into the fire safety requirements B1 and B2 as treated in the approved document. Now I'm on to talk about the section 2, 3 and 4 of the approved document B volume 1, sections that deal with the means of escape from the dwelling houses and flats, as well as the internal fire spread due to linings of walls and ceilings. In this episode, you'll find out what to take in consideration and why, and I will stop to ponder a little bit on the situation when the building changes the group from 1B to 1C due to the vertical extension of the house, either by the creation of a full story over the existing building or changing the loft space into the habitable space, either by simple attic conversion or otherwise. Let us start with means of escape from dwelling houses. In the document, you'll note a diagram showing different possibilities which generally cover the following circumstances. 1. Escape from the ground floor. 2. Escape from upper stories at max 4.5 meter above ground level. 3. Escape from the stories over the 4.5 meter limit, which further divides consideration into the situation when there is only one story over that limit and where there are 2 or more stories over that limit. The guidance recognizes increasing risk with the height of the building and reduction of possible escape alternatives for its occupants. It is easy to imagine that you can jump out of the window at the ground floor or even first floor of your building, but going higher of the drop will make it increasingly more difficult to evacuate. An important matter to consider is inclusivity of the building. You cannot expect old people or people with inhibited mobility jumping out of windows. They can certainly be lowered down through the window at the ground or first floor, but dropping such person from too high will equal manslaughter. The guidance for the ground story is either to allow habitable rooms to have direct exit through the window or door, or through a hole. For stories level under 4.5 meters in height, measured from the ground level, we can allow people escape through direct exit, window or door. But if not possible, there should be a protected stairwell in place. Interestingly, if you want to connect rooms internally, like in the case of Jack and Jill bathroom, only one room needs to have the direct exit if there is no provision of protected stairwell. Both ground floors and first floors can have inner rooms if the room has direct evacuation option like an escape window. No inner rooms allowed for floors at higher levels though. And what is an inner room, you ask? It is the room that has no other way to exit but to go through the doors leading to another room, otherwise called access room. It could be a basement room, man cave, bedroom sharing living space, generally any room but the room solely used for circulation, like vestibule or porch. Some inner rooms are allowed, like kitchen, laundry or utility, dressing rooms, bathrooms, water closets or showers or galleries within a reason. And the access rooms will need to have smoke alarms and cannot be kitchens. You cannot walk through the kitchen to try to escape from another room, as kitchen is one of the most certain places where the fire can start. Now, when we move through the threshold of 4.5 meter level of the next story, we need to think protected stairwell or several stairways. If we have several stairways, they need to be separated so that eventual incapacitation of one way of exit does not influence the other, meaning either fire-resistant construction between them or this one room between them. That would give you two different walls, which would, at the end of the day, reach the requirement of fire separation. If there is only one escape stairway, it needs to be protected to REI 30 construction, REI 30 construction. What does that mean? It means that the enclosure will need to hold for 30 minutes in respect of structure, will need to stop flame and smoke, and reduce heat. Let us do it again. REI 30, where R stands for structural consideration, load-bearing capacity of the enclosure. E, integrity, which means it remains in place to hold flame and smoke out. And I, insulation, limits the temperature on the other side of the wall to 140 degrees centigrade. Sometimes you may choose to reduce the radiant heat only, and it falls under the letter W. Radiant heat transmission limited to 15 kilowatts per meter square. Usable when you want to divide space with glass. The protected stairway should go straight to the final exit, or could split into two alternative exits going through other rooms. These rooms need to be separated with fire construction and cannot be inner rooms. If there is only one story over the 4.5 meter consideration, we can cut it away from the consideration using REI 30 construction between itself and the story under, and provide alternative escape route. In any case, the protected stairwell needs to ensure its ceiling or soffit is protected to stop any fire spread through it. For dwelling houses with 2 or more stories over the 4.5 limit, stories at level over 7.5 meters should have an alternative escape route isolated from the bottom stories, or a sprinkler system throughout. For passenger lifts over 4.5 meters over the ground level, the lift shaft should be either within the protected stairwell enclosure or be enclosed by the fire-resistant construction itself. So how about the ventilation? It is simple in the buildings with floor levels under the 4.5 limit, as no special considerations are needed, but when the limit is a little bit higher, is reached, the staircase should be isolated from the remaining of the house, and any penetration should be fire stopped. Duct in rigid steel, mechanical ventilation recirculating air into the stairways stopped upon smoke detection, and warm air heating systems limited to 27 degrees Celsius as measured in the living room at mid-room height. Now let's get some definitions, shall we? What is an escape window or door? Well, it needs to be wide or high enough to allow a man with a belly through, meaning 450 millimeters at 1 meter 10 height, and of minimum 0.33 meters square area. Going with the minimum width, the opening should be at least 734 millimeters in other dimension. This can prove difficult for obese people and people with mobility problems. I generally recommend a fully openable window whenever possible. Windows can have locks and child-proofing, but need to remain open once open. The escapee should be able to reach safe distance from the house of at least the building height away from the building, or height of immediate extension, whichever is greater. So what is the within reason requirement for galleries in the rooms? First of all, there is no limit on the area of the gallery if provided with alternative exit or escape window, if under 4.5 meter level consideration in relation to the ground level, or cannot be bigger than 50% of the room, including stairs. Stairs within 7.5 meter at gallery level and 3 meter away from the exit from the room. If you want to evacuate through the flat roof or the balcony, it needs to be safe to do so, meaning ray-fairy construction and guarded from trips and falls, and leads to story exit or external escape route. Habitable rooms in basements should have escape window, external door or access to protected stairway. External escape routes are possible with limits imposed by the guidance, and extra weatherproofing if the stairs lead to stories over 6 meters in height. Fire-resisting construction should extend 1.1 meter vertically up over the landing, top landing, excluding basements to ground floor escape. 1.5 meter horizontally either side and 9 meter vertically down. Just imagine raging fire. How far away from that fire do you think you'll need to be able to pass by? 1.1, 1.8 and 9 meters are generally good indicators. Well, I'm not sure about the 1.1 meter, but sure you can crawl when you're at the top. There are some additional or otherwise consideration for works on existing dwellings. Notably, when the work is to the windows, if replaced, need to be not worse than previously or not less than minimum required, and may require installation of cavity barriers. When you do a loft conversion, you need to make sure there is a protected stairway introduced with Ray 30, fire doors E20. And when the work is on historic doors, measures may be taken to attempt increase of the fire protection to E20. If the protected stairwell is open at the ground floor, you need to provide sprinkler protection to open plan, separate ground floor from the first floor to allow loft occupants to exit through the first floor window when the sprinkler system does not work, and enclose kitchen with ray-fairy construction. So basically it means if you have an open plan kitchen that goes on your stairwell, is open with the stairwell, you'll have to close that space. Well, at least close the kitchen. Provide sprinkler system if you still want your living space to be open for onto the stairwell, but then again you'll need to do a bit of closing up on the first story to enable all of the loft occupants to go through the first floor room window. So quite involved, and it's rather more cost effective to basically provide one unobscured and direct exit from that loft within the protected stairwell with Ray 30 and E20 doors. Off to section 3, means of escape, flats. Generally, the philosophy of the approach is similar to the dwelling houses, but the communal circulation areas are treated separately to the space within the flat, and you can jump off the window if you can, if the floor level is under 4.5 meters in height. The approach follows the following consideration: that the fire is contained to flats, but localized fires otherwise can happen. No external rescue is considered. There is unlikely simultaneous evacuation required. Stay put strategy is considered here, confining fire to flat and allowing relatively little of the heat and smoke free exit. In mixed-use buildings, separate escape routes should be provided except in special circumstances, when habitable space is ancillary to the use of the main building and whether small. The flat arrangement follows that of the dwelling, but with the final exit being the flat entrance. In flats where no reliance can be made on escape windows, the escape from any room when the hall is of ray 30 should not be further away than 9 meters. Or, if there is no protected hallway, 9 meters from the furthest point of any room. And there cannot be any kitchen in the way, or at least 1.8 meters away from any escape route. You see, imagine raging oil fire on the hob. That 1.8 meter distance, if that ever happened to you, seems to be a good guidance to finding out if the kitchen is or is not in the way. Separation of living and sleeping sections of the house is also possible, with addition of alternative exit when otherwise inner room scenario occurs within the flat. When evacuating the flat, persons should be able to change the direction of evacuation if encountering raging fire from some flat in their way. This provision is generally achieved by excluding stairway, either by lobby or corridor separation. Escape distance from any flat should not exceed 7.5 meters for one-way consideration and 30 meters for two-way consideration. Way meaning access to protected stairwell, either one or more. In certain cases, the travel distance may be reduced to 4.5 meters. Protected access to the stairwell and corridor should be ventilated to remove smoke. General protection for the protected stairwell goes to ray 60 and all other protected spaces to ray 30, with self-closing doors of E30 category. Head height should be minimum of 2 meters, but it's not including door frames, which may be lower. Emergency lighting should be provided and emergency routes marked. Refuse chutes should be isolated from the escape routes and flats. External staircase can be used but it's limited to 6 meters over ground for the only escape staircase and 6 meters over podiums of roofs if the building and that roof is also served by an internal staircase. Power circuits sufficiently protected and circuits required for firefighting should run through areas of low fire probability. There are further requirements for the stairs, doors, final exits, lifts, and they all follow logically and are logically tied to allow people uninterrupted exit when needed and to provide enough fire resistance in the event of fire. This concludes requirement B1, means of escape dwellings and flats. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the requirement B2, internal fire spread, linings. So what does the legislation say? Requirement B2 got 2 points, 1 and 2. 1 says to inhibit the spread of fire within the building, the internal linings shall A. adequately resist the spread of flame over their surfaces, and B. have, if ignited, either a rate of heat release or a rate of fire growth which is reasonable in the circumstances. And point 2, in this paragraph, internal lining means the materials or products used in linings of any partition, wall, ceiling or other internal structure. This essentially means No carpets on the ceilings and walls. Well, maybe. The intention is to minimize the spread of fire through the fabric of the building internally. The smoke and fumes generation, floor and stairs covering and furnishings is not considered. In general, all lining materials can produce high-intense dripping droplets, classified as D2, and can produce high emissions of smoke with high volume and intensity and be combustible. However, depending on the location, can be either fire class B to C or D, meaning very limited, and medium contribution to fire. So circulation spaces, rooms in general, and garages and small rooms and garages. Sections of the walls can be of poorer quality within certain limits, and framing of doors and windows generally does not fall within the consideration. Special consideration should be given when insulated panels are used or PTFE membranes. Use of thermoplastics is conditioned. Plastic that deforms or is consumed with the rise of temperature in windows, roof lights and lighting diffusers is generally fine. For class TPA, rigid, which extinguishes when the source of fuel is removed, it's thick enough to do that, or TPB with limited fire rate. Applications away from circulation areas and when specific limits are observed are good. So perhaps at the end of the day a carpet could be hanged on the wall after all. So here you have it, approved document B, section 2, 3 and 4, under the belt. Section 2 of the document outlines means of escape for dwelling houses, emphasizing different scenarios based on building height and layout. Ground floors can utilize direct exits, while upper stories within 4.5 meters of ground level may use direct exits or protected stairwells. Buildings over 4.5 meters require protected stairways meeting RAFERI standards. Escape windows and doors must meet specific accessibility criteria. In section 3, which covers means of escape from flats, the focus is on containment within units and controlled evacuation. Separation of living and sleeping areas enhances safety, and emergency access routes must be well ventilated and illuminated. Evacuation distances are regulated with provisions for alternative exits. Section 4, requirement B2, addresses internal fire spread within buildings. Materials used for linings must resist flame spread and have reasonable heat release rates. Special considerations are given to insulated panels and thermoplastic materials, with restrictions based on fire resistance and application location. In the next episode, I will cover requirement B3 and B4, so internal fire spread structure and external fire spread, section 5 to 12. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that the consideration of fire safety escape in dwellings as well as the internal fire spread begins to make more sense to you. If you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn or send me an email. I am more than happy to help you out. In Bytna, we deal with planning, designing and managing of your projects, and we are always glad to facilitate a free initial consultation to steer you in the right direction. Visit www.bytna.co.uk and reach out to us. Whether your question is if we can help you with your project or what should I do, we will be able to give you a piece of non-obligatory advice. At Bytna, we help our clients design and execute their dream homes or investments. If your building is falling apart, we can also help investigate the reasons behind it and to provide you with an appropriate strategy, design and specifications for the repair. Thank you again for listening. Please voice up your opinions. I'm waiting for you on LinkedIn and I want to hear from you. Toodaloo!